That's your book there, right, Mark?
Well, why don't we continue with the program? I'd like to introduce Sandra Cabot, who is the Director of Tourism for the City of St. Genevieve.
Order in the back. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to everyone that helped organize the lunch. I think we can all give them an applause because that was wonderful. And a special thanks to those members of the Foundation for Restoration of St. Genevieve who volunteered to make brownies. If you didn't get one, you're missing out. They're all homemade, and there might even still be some left. So be sure to find one before the end of the day if you can. All right, so I have the pleasure of introducing someone before I make my remarks. You're still not able to hear me? Okay, how's that? All right. Did you hear the remark about the brownies? They were homemade by members of the Foundation for Restoration of St. Genevieve, and we really hope that you either had one and enjoyed it, or you get one because they're awfully good, and someone went to a lot of time and trouble, and we appreciate our members for doing that. Okay, Madison, you see what you got to do here. So I'll be providing an update to you about where we stand on our national park status, and also a few remarks about the Missouri 2021 Bicentennial. However, before I make my remarks, I want to introduce a very special guest that we're very glad to have here with us today. Mr. Madison Baker is from the staff of Senator Roy Blunt's office, and he's in his field office very near us here in St. Genevieve. He comes from Cape Girardeau, and he's been all over the state already this morning at Old Greenville Days, and now he's here with us, and he has other obligations this afternoon. So we just want to say how much we have all appreciated Senator Blunt's support through this whole process. Of course, we wouldn't be where we are right now with this national park status if it weren't for his leadership and the support of everyone in all of his offices, and of course our other members of Congress who we've worked with very closely over the last several years. So thank you, and I'd like to introduce Madison and make some remarks.
Thank you, Sandra. Well, it's great to be here. I just wanted to reiterate the Senator's support for this project. It's been a long time coming. The Senator had originally introduced legislation back in May of 2016. In March of last year, the bill was signed into law, designating St. Genevieve as a national park. So, with that being said, he would have liked to have had the arrow out on the highway yesterday, but we continue to be vigilant in making sure that this gets completed. But the Senator was in district, I guess it would have been about 2 weeks ago, and he was asking about this project. So he remains interested in this, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that this is a priority for him. Our legislative director, Dan Burgess, will be in St. Genevieve probably in 2 weeks to get some updates on what's happening. So if there aren't any questions, I will keep it at that, and Sandra will go ahead and give the update on what's currently happening here. All right.
Thanks for being here with us, Madison. We know you have a very busy schedule. It's always nice to have someone here representing. As he pointed out, it was March of last year when the legislation that authorized the St. Genevieve National Historical Park was approved by Congress and signed, and signed into law. We actually got really excited at that time, and I gave an update to last year's history conference, and it's kind of hard to believe that it's a whole year later, and here I am with another update. But almost 18 months have passed, and soon to come up on our 2-year anniversary since that legislation was completed. So In that period, we have seen some significant developments that could be considered milestones, and we also continue to see slow but steady progress in the other areas, which could be considered laying the groundwork, laying the foundation for the park. As many of you know, we recently hosted National Park Service Acting Director, Mr. David Vela from Washington, D.C. He came here to St. Genevieve, and we certainly were thrilled to have him here. He was at the National Park Service Regional Office in Omaha for a meeting with all of the superintendents from across the region. And he had made a promise to Senator Blunt that he would, at his first opportunity, come to see this project, which he has championed from the beginning, and see it with his own eyes and learn just where exactly on the map St. Genevieve, Missouri is and what's so special about it. And I think the other members of the audience here today that were with us on that day will say that he seemed genuinely moved by what he experienced here in St. Genevieve. And the long and short of it was, now I get it. You can't come to St. Genevieve and walk down those historic streets and see this incredible architecture and experience the ambiance and the feel of the place without just really having it have an impact on you. And that was definitely what we experienced, or what Mr. Vela experienced when he was here. So during that visit, the mayor and other local leaders were very glad to welcome him, of course, to our city. The mayor reiterated the standing invitation that had been made earlier to the Park Service to offer shared space to the National Park Service or their staff in our Welcome Center, which, as you know, is at the corner of Main and Market Street in the Historic District, especially if this would assist in the progression with the establishment of the park. We're authorized, we're not established yet, and so we're really looking forward to that establishment date. At that meeting, there was also an update on the superintendent position. As many of you know, our acting superintendent for some years now has been Mr. Tim Good, who at one time was the superintendent of the Grant site in St. Louis, and then he received a promotion and was at the Lincoln Boyhood Home site in Springfield, Illinois, and still working very closely and with members of Congress and also with our local sites on making progress on the St. Genevieve Park. But at the meeting when David Vela was here, the city and other stakeholders were asked what they saw as the priority for qualifications in a park superintendent for the St. Genevieve National Historical Park. And so we discussed that with him, and we were very pleased to be asked those types of questions and to be able to give input, because obviously it's important that that be someone who has a sincere passion for history and has really a good way of working with the community and would be a good community partner for us, and also really understands the diverse fabric that makes up the St. Genevieve area and our historic sites. So we were given a timeline for the superintendent position. They had posted the position following the requirements for federal hiring. And so we understand that right now, the last couple of weeks, they've been interviewing the candidates that were finalists for that position, and they expect to make an offer in the month of October, more than likely. And so just depending on who it is that is chosen, and what their life situation is, will depend on how quickly that person has boots on the ground here in St. Genevieve. So this is really a milestone for us. In the meantime, because Tim Good is no longer our acting superintendent, we have been sort of brought under the wing of the superintendent for the St. Louis Gateway Arch National Park, and that is Michael Ward. And so we've had several meetings with Michael Ward and his staff, and they've been very forthcoming and very helpful. We all know that this is the Amaro House, and so the Amaro House, in terms of another major milestone, since the authorization of the park. The Amarillo House, which was formerly owned by the State of Missouri State Park System, is now actually owned by the U.S. Department of Interior and is operating under a cooperative agreement with State Parks System for staffing and so on. Okay, so this was a year ago in August when we signed the memorandums of understanding between the city and the parks, the county and the parks, all of the other historic site owners and operators. That's in the front of the Amarillo House. So this is everyone on that day of signing of the MOUs, and that's right. And so since that time, the Amarillo itself has been transferred in ownership to the National Park Service. And for a time, we had parks rangers coming to St. Genevieve to learn and assist in the Amarillo interpretation. And now, almost every week, there are Park Service interpreters coming down to St. Genevieve from the Gateway Arch staff pool, and coming down to assist in the interpretation at the Amarillo. Sometimes the state parks is still doing it, and sometimes the park rangers are doing that interpretation. So it's an early example of just the wonderful partnership that we, it's a developing relationship, a budding relationship, but it's an early example of that promise being fulfilled. And so we're very excited about that. And so discussions are ongoing between the Park Service and the state for other nearby land parcels. Members of this group worked very hard with the Missouri State Legislature to offer up several, I believe it was 5 land parcels in total, to help with the establishment of the park. And the first one that they've accepted so far has been the Amarillo. And then I know Tandy is here, and there are ongoing negotiations with the Colonial Dames organization for additional historic properties, the Bolduc being the most obvious one, and additional historical properties, and also the what we would know as the former bank building, but the Center for French Colonial Life building is part of ongoing discussions, which we can't really go into that, but all these things have to work out and come together for the establishment of the park itself. And although we often feel maybe over anxious about this, or it seems like 18 months, whoever thought 18 months ago that we would still be not established yet. But as they remind us they remind us very graciously when we're in meetings, it may seem like it takes a long time for all of this to play out, but once the National Park Service is here, they'll be here forever. So it's important to put it into the broad scope of things, not to get too impatient. I do hope that we'll have more to tell next year at the conference. Maybe we'll be established by then. It would be wonderful news. Certainly, if that happens between now and then, you'll all be hearing about it and all be invited to a great celebration when that happens. But what's next? We expect that the superintendent position will be filled this fall. As per Mike Ward, our interim superintendent, he couldn't be here with us today due to previous obligations, but in his notes to me, he said the #1 priority for the Park Service is establishment. So I know that Madison will be very glad to hear that and report that back to Senator Blunt. That's their #1 priority, getting the superintendent hired, having the establishment of the park, and getting the critical mass of properties together to reach that level. And so we keep building relations with the Park Service leaders, laying the foundation for the future, and engaging with the resources of the Park Service. So that's where we are right now, and that's what we're seeing in the near term. And then out on the horizon, we're looking forward eagerly to the establishment date. Any questions of anyone? Okay. So I was also asked, so there you have on the right, that's Representative Jason Smith, and then of course Senator Blunt, and in front of him are two representatives from the Park Service, Tim Good on the right, and Cam Shawley in the center with his hat bent down. He's signing the document. And then three representatives from the Missouri State Parks. On the far left is Donna Roush, who is our site administrator for the Felix Valley State Historic Site, and also does a lot of work with the MRO. So we'll move on. I was also asked to cover the topic of, and this is a National Park Service flyer. I think I showed this last year too, for those who were here. So I was also asked to cover some updates about Missouri 2021. How many people have heard of this or aware of it? Okay, more hands than I expected to see. That's really encouraging. So I just have a few points that I want to go over. So 2021 is going to be obviously the 200-year anniversary of the celebration of statehood by Missouri. And so there are many activities leading up to this. And gosh, Bob, I guess we've been meeting with representatives about Missouri 20, it's been over a year now, hasn't it? So they've been really working on this. There was a Bicentennial Commission formed in Jefferson City. Lots of activities. These are some bookmarks that were given to us, for distribution. I had some out there at the registration table. If you want one and you weren't able to get one, let me know and I'll take your name and get you one. But it's just important to remember that it's coming up. It's now, really only probably 18 months away from their major timing in the spring of 2021. And so there are several key projects that you'll be hearing about from the standpoint of statewide activities that are taking place, and we are participating in all of these in one way or another. First of all, there's the Missouri 2021 Photography Project. So this is a project where anyone can submit photography online. Just go to missouri2021.org. You can submit photography online that you think helps represent the scenic beauty or the historic beauty, or it could be anything. It could be people enjoying a festival, it could be people enjoying fishing, whatever it might be that really speaks to you as as a Missouri scene. They're looking for photography from all over the state, and there will be 200 of them chosen to become part of the final photography exhibit, and this exhibit will be traveling around the state. We're planning to host it probably next spring, and perhaps the spring after that as well. We're planning to host it here in St. Genevieve. And so when you hear about the Missouri Photography Project, and if you have anyone who does photography or yourself, please go online and enter. There's also Missouri Bicentennial Quilt. So the Bicentennial Commission partnered with the Missouri Quilt Company to come up with the idea of having a quilt to represent Missouri's bicentennial. And so it will have a 6-inch square block from each one of the Missouri counties and the independent city of St. Louis, unless they merge by then. I don't know what they'll do with that block. So the Missouri Star Quilt Company is going to quilt all these pieces together into one quilt topper and then quilt the whole thing. And the Missouri Quilt will, go on a busman's tour of the state as well in the year 2021. And so St. Genevieve County participates in that as well. We met with quilting clubs across the county and encouraged them to submit ideas for the St. Genevieve County block. And there was one winner who has been chosen. It's Linda Herman, and she did a beautiful fleur-de-lis and St. Genevieve County, and we're hoping that it will represent us very well. And to recognize the efforts of the others who also submitted entries for consideration, we're going to work with a local quilt club to help us turn our St. Genevieve County quilt blocks into one quilt. We don't know, it might be baby quilt size, or it might have a lot of filler in between and be twin bed size. We don't know yet. But we will have a St. Genevieve County quilt as well, and all of those very talented quilters' efforts will be showcased on that. So that's the Missouri Bicentennial Quilt Project. There's also a Missouri Encyclopedia Project, the people, places, and events that have shaped your community. So no matter if you're from here in St. Genevieve or St. Louis or Old Mines, certainly make sure that your community is represented there, and you can get all those details online. We have been working to submit Missouri legacy submissions from St. Genevieve, so especially looking at some of the signature events that St. Genevieve puts on, like the King's Ball, the Jour de Fête, our Rural Heritage celebration in the fall, and submit all of these for consideration to the Bicentennial Commission and see if they make it into the Missouri Legacy Project. There's also a Missouri Bicentennial license plate. So if your plates are coming up for renewal and you're interested in showing your patriotic support of Missouri's Bicentennial, you can have a Missouri Bicentennial license plate. So be sure to go online or ask about that. And two other things, and these are not core projects, but different people submitted ideas for statewide projects for the Bicentennial Commission to consider, and one of those that won was the Missouri Bicentennial Mural. So this is going to be a mural of all of Missouri's symbols, like the dogwood, the bluebird, and so on, and it will be the final will actually be on aluminum, and it will be hanging in the Truman Building in Jefferson City. They're being done section by section in little communities across the state. During the Jour de Fête, we hosted the section that had the crawfish on it. I didn't know Missouri had a state crustacean, but apparently we do. And so we hosted the crawfish. I kind of hoped that we might get the fiddle, or there were a little clump of grapes up in the corner, so some people got to paint on the grapes. But we hosted that, and almost 400 people participated in that effort to paint a little tiny square. The youngest that we had that participated was 12 days old, and the oldest that we had that participated was 99. So that was kind of cool, and in 2 years, those, like the 12-day-old child will maybe be old enough to toddle over there and see the section of the crustacean that she helped to paint. But it'll be something that will always be hanging in our state's capital, and it will be representative of people's contributions from across the state. So that was kind of a neat thing. If we can get it back again, we'll try to do that. Of course, there's a lot of demand for it. So, and then lastly, there's a school project going on. So if you have children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews, ask them if they're participating in the Missouri Bicentennial Penny Project, because there's a penny project too. And school children are, gathering pennies, and those pennies are going to add up for funds to help preserve state documents in Jefferson City. So a lot of really neat things going on, and this is the website right here. And then we have one final slide. And that's it. That's kind of their logo, the Missouri 2021, past, present, and future. So if you have any questions about that I didn't already go over, you can certainly go to their website. And thank you for your time and attention.